After my divorce wiped out half my savings and all my patience, I bought a modest lakefront cabin in upstate New York. All I wanted was solitude, a few good casts, and a cold beer on a dock I could call my own. So I did what any rule-abiding citizen would do. I researched every regulation, read the HOA bylaws, consulted environmental codes, and got all the necessary permits. Then I built a small, clean, legal fishing dock. Nothing extravagant, just wood, footings, and a future full of peaceful afternoons. Enter Linda Grover. 59, childless, and recently displaced as the self-declared queen of the HOA, Linda had ruled our lakeside community for a decade like it was her personal fiefdom. Micromanaging lawn heights, mailbox collars, and God forbid, solar panels. Just months before I moved in, Linda had suffered a rare public defeater court case over a property line that left her embarrassed and stripped of credibility. She needed a new target. A new win. My dock was perfect bait. It gleamed across the water, no lumber, clean lines, and, worse for her, visible from Linda's kitchen window. Her own dock, meanwhile, was a collapsing disaster patched with duct tape and desperation. She tried to hide her disdain behind a smile the day she walked up while I was bolting the last railing. "Lovely dock," she said, forcing chair. "But it's quite modern. Doesn't quite fit our community aesthetic. Did you, consult the HOA before building?" I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Sure did. Reviewed every guideline. County permits, environmental assessments, even setback rules. This dock's more compliant than most houses around here." Her smile twitched. She wasn't expecting that. Linda was used to neighbors folding at the mention of regulation. But I wasn't most neighbors. Still, she walked away with a cryptic, "We'll see about that," like some villain from a suburban soap opera. 3 days later, I got a letter certified mail. A violation notice from the HOA, $500 daily fines for aesthetic disruption. I actually laughed. My dock, which had passed every state inspection, was apparently too attractive for Linda's taste. Most people would have panicked. I opened my laptop and went to work. The email I drafted that night included legal citations from state environmental law, precedents from 3 court jurisdictions, and a full breakdown of how my structure improved shoreline health. Attached were geotagged photos, structural engineering assessments, and a copy of the environmental impact study I'd commissioned pre-built. The kind of email that looks like it came from a top-tier law firm, not a guy who just wanted to fish. Linda's crusade should have ended there. Instead, she doubled down. She Googled me, found out I worked for the state's Department of Environmental Resources, and decided she'd uncovered a scandal. Her mind twisted knowledge of the system into corruption. She rallied neighbors, twisted facts, and hired a law firm known for loud letters and bigger bills. 2 weeks later, I received a formal legal demand: remove the dock, apologize in the local paper, and pay $75,000 in damages. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I feared I was wrong, but because right doesn't always win. The next morning, I called my boss. "Rick," I said, "Linda Grover is trying to sue me into oblivion. Claims I abused my government role to build my dock." There was a pause. Then laughter. "She's got no idea who you are, does she?" "No," I said. "And maybe it's time she finds out." See, Linda thought she was tangling with a state employee, some paper pusher with just enough authority to be annoying. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just following the rules. I wrote them. I was the senior regulatory specialist who drafted the dock permit standards in 2018. My signature was on the policy Linda was now misquoting in her violation notices. Still, I waited. I let her build her case, tell her half-truths, and prepare her big public showdown. When she scheduled a community meeting to expose government corruption, I RSVP'd yes with a smile. That Thursday night, the community center was packed. Linda stood front and center with a PowerPoint, her lawyer beside her. She laid out her version of events like a courtroom drama. Photos, charts, claims of abuse, insider deals, and special privileges. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly, manila folder in hand, and walked to the front. Calm. Measured. Thanks for your concern, Ms. Grover, I began, opening my folder. But there are a few details you missed. She interrupted. You think just because you work for the state, you can ignore our rules. I smiled. I don't just work for the state, Linda. I'm the official who wrote the rules. Section 4.2.6 of the Shoreline Regulation Code. My name's on the original draft. That environmental compliance standard you cited. I co-authored it. The room gasped. Her lawyer packed up his briefcase and walked out. I didn't bypass anything, I continued. In fact, this dock was featured in our department's environmental newsletter as the model for sustainable shoreline structures. You could feel the air shift. People whispered. Phones came out. Neighbors who'd backed her started to look at her differently. Linda tried to pivot. He still violated HOA rules. I'm the president. But her voice cracked under the weight of reality. And just like that, the HOA board held a vote of no confidence. Her presidency ended right there in that room. But Linda wasn't done. The next morning, she was on the news, spinning a new narrative casting herself as the victim of government abuse. She filed complaints with the state, the governor, the attorney general accusing me of bribery, fraud, and threats. Her campaign reached a crescendo when she called my department, demanding my termination. What she didn't realize. All calls are recorded. That audio of Linda admitting she didn't care about the law, that this was personal revenge was all we needed. When she screamed, "He made me look like an idiot," on a government line, it was game over. We scheduled a public education session at the community center. Topic: How to file government complaints the right way. Linda showed up ready for battle again. She brought binders, screenshots, more slides. But I had one thing she didn't, the truth. Midway through the session, I played the audio. Her own voice, admitting this was about pride. Then the clip where she threatened to destroy my reputation unless I was fired. She tried to scream, to object. But the sheriff's deputy in the front row had had enough. By the time the final audio played where she said, "I know he's corrupt even if I can't prove it," Deputy Hart stood up. "Ma'am," he said, "the state attorney is reviewing criminal charges." Linda paled. Her knees buckled. The crowd that once cheered her turned to stare in silence. She was arrested 2 weeks later for defamation, filing false complaints, and harassment. She pled guilty, paid fines, published a public apology, and moved away shortly after. Her house sold at a loss. The dock. Still there. The water. Still peaceful. Linda learned the hard way what happens when you call 911 on the law. Sometimes the permit office calls back.